The stars trembled as the Vrex ships tore through space. Their massive armada moved like a living thing, hundreds of vessels that looked more like giant sea creatures than spaceships. Each one was partly alive, with hulls that could heal and weapons that learned from every battle. Admiral Tom Reed of the United Galactic Alliance stood on the bridge of his command ship, his face grim as he watched the holographic display. Another colony had fallen. That made 7 in just 2 weeks. "They've adapted to the pulse cannons," said his first officer, a tall blue-skinned alien named Krell. "Just like they adapted to everything else we've thrown at them." Reed slammed his fist on the control panel. "How is that possible? We just developed those weapons." "They're ships. They learn," Krell said, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "They get hit once, and then they're immune." Reed watched as the red dots representing Vrex ships pushed deeper into Alliance space. The blue dots of Alliance ships were blinking out one by one. The outer colonies were already lost. The middle worlds would be next. Then the core worlds, including Earth. "Send out the evacuation order for Rigel 3 and Proxima Centauri," Reed ordered. "They're next in the path." As the bridge crew rushed to obey, Reed wondered what he would tell the Alliance Council. That nothing in their arsenal could stop the Vrex. That after 800 years of peace among the stars, they were facing extinction. Miles away, on the dusty mining outpost of Helios 7, Jack Miller wiped the sweat from his forehead and walked toward his small house on the edge of town. At 62, he was too old to be working in the mines, but retirement bored him. The physical labor kept his mind off the past. The hot sun beat down on his weathered face as he approached his home, a simple metal structure built to withstand the planet's frequent dust storms. Nothing fancy, but it was his. Inside, the cool air was a relief. Jack dropped his work bag and headed straight for the shower to wash away the red dust that covered him from head to toe. As the water ran over his scared body, he tried not to think about how he got those scars. About the wars he'd fought before humanity joined the Alliance. About the things he'd helped create. The loud beeping of his communication unit interrupted his thoughts. Jack frowned. Nobody called him these days. He threw on a robe and walked to the living room, leaving wet footprints on the floor. The screen showed an official Alliance military channel, highest priority. Jack hesitated before accepting the call. His past had a way of finding him when he least wanted it to. The face that appeared belonged to Commander Wilson, older now but still instantly recognizable. Jack hadn't seen him in over 20 years. "Jack Miller," Wilson said, his voice tight with stress. "You're a hard man to find." "That's the point of hiding, Mark," Jack replied. "What's so important that you're calling me after all this time?" Wilson's image flickered as the signal weakened for a moment. "I'm sure you've heard about the Vrex invasion." "Hard not to. They say the Vrex ships adapt to whatever we throw at them." "It's worse than what they're telling civilians," Wilson said. His face looked haggard, like he hadn't slept in days. "Our weapons are useless. They adapt too quickly. The Alliance is losing worlds faster than we can evacuate them." Jack felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because we need the Phoenix Project, Jack." The room seemed to grow colder. Jack stared at Wilson's image on the screen, memories flooding back, memories of fire and screams and technology that should never have been created. "The Phoenix Project was shut down 30 years ago," Jack said carefully. "For good reason. The Alliance banned that kind of technology. Hell, Earth banned it even before we joined the Alliance. I know what it can do, Jack. I was there." Wilson's voice dropped. "But we're out of options. The Vrex have never encountered human tech from before the Alliance days. They've never seen anything like the Phoenix." Jack walked to his kitchen and poured himself a drink with shaking hands. "Those suits were destroyed. All of them." "Not all of them," Wilson said. "You kept one. The prototype." Jack froze with the glass halfway to his lips. "How did you know that?" "Because I know you, Jack. You've never trusted anyone enough to let them destroy every last piece. You always kept insurance. Jack set his glass down untouched. For a moment, he considered lying. But what was the point? If things were as bad as Wilson said, there might not be any safe places left soon. It's not operational, Jack said finally. I made sure of that. But you can fix it. It wasn't a question. They both knew the answer. Jack walked to the far corner of the room and moved a heavy shelf aside, revealing a hidden door in the floor. He hadn't opened it in decades, but the biometric lock still recognized his fingerprint. The basement was cool and dark. Jack flipped on the lights and descended the stairs, feeling every one of his 62 years in his aching knees. In the center of the concrete floor sat a large metal container, sealed with both mechanical and electronic locks. I still have it, Jack told Wilson, the communication unit still in his hand. But Mark, you don't understand what you're asking. The Phoenix was never stable. It had a mind of its own. That's why we shut it down. Can it fight the Vrex? Wilson pressed. It can fight anything, Jack said quietly. That's the problem. Once it starts fighting, it doesn't want to stop. The Vrex are heading for the core worlds now, Wilson said. Earth will be hit within weeks. We need that suit, Jack. We need the Phoenix. Jack stared at the sealed container. Inside was humanity's darkest creation, a battle suit designed to adapt and evolve in combat, built before humanity had learned the value of peace. The Alliance races would be horrified if they knew humans had once created such a thing. But they'd be dead if the Vrex couldn't be stopped. I'll need to reactivate it, Jack said. And I'm the only one who can control it. It was coded to my neural patterns. Then you're coming with it, Wilson said, relief evident in his voice. I'm sending coordinates for a rendezvous. The Alliance flagship Intrepid will meet you in orbit. Get that thing working, Jack. You might be the last hope we have. The call ended, leaving Jack alone with the sealed container. Slowly, he began to unlock it, each turn of a key and each code entered feeling like a step toward damnation. The lid hissed as it opened, revealing a suit of dark metal armor. It didn't look impressive, not like the sleek, glittering technology the Alliance used. This was ugly, practical, built for one purpose only. Its surface was etched with warning symbols in a dozen Earth languages. Jack placed his hand on the cold metal, and to his surprise, he felt a slight vibration in response, as if the suit recognized him after all these years. "Hello, old friend," he whispered. "Looks like it's time to wake up." Jack's small transport ship docked with the Alliance flagship Intrepid 3 days later. He had spent those days working on the Phoenix suit, reactivating systems that had been dormant for decades. The suit was sealed in its container again, but Jack could feel it humming with power, like a predator waiting to pounce. 2 Alliance soldiers met him at the airlock. Their faces were tight with stress, and they barely spoke as they escorted him through the ship. Jack noticed the chaos immediately. The corridors were packed with people, some in military uniforms, others clearly civilians. Children cried as medics tended to the wounded. The smell of fear hung in the air. "Evacuees?" Jack asked one of his escorts. The soldier nodded grimly. "From Proxima Centauri. We got some out before the Vrex arrived, but not all." They reached the bridge, where Admiral Reed was waiting. The Admiral was a tall man with hard eyes that had seen too much death recently. He looked Jack up and down with clear disappointment. "You're the weapons expert?" Reed asked, not bothering to hide his doubt. "I was expecting someone." "Younger?" Jack suggested with a thin smile. "Sorry to disappoint you, Admiral." Reed sighed and pointed to the large container that had been brought up behind Jack. "And that's the secret weapon Commander Wilson promised me." "It's called the Phoenix Project," Jack said. "And it's not exactly a weapon. It's a battle suit." Reed stared at the container. "A battle suit. One battle suit against an armada that has destroyed our best warships. Trust me, this isn't like anything you've seen before," Jack said. "But we need to be careful with it. There are reasons it was locked away." Reed's reply was cut off by a woman's voice. "I'd like to examine it first." Jack turned to see a tall woman with short gray hair and the insignia of a chief science officer on her uniform. She had the distinctive silver eyes of people from one of the outer colonies. "Dr. Ileana Reyes," she said, extending her hand. "Chief scientist of the Intrepid. And you must be Jack Miller. Your name is in our historical archives." Jack's stomach tightened. He hadn't expected to be recognized. "Not for good reasons, I imagine. History is rarely simple," Dr. Rice said diplomatically. "But I know enough to be concerned about anything called the Phoenix Project. May I?" Jack nodded, and Dr. Rice approached the container. She ran a scanner over it, frowning at the results. "This is strange," she murmured. "I'm getting organic readings mixed with technology I don't recognize." "It's old tech," Jack explained, "from before humanity joined the Alliance, before we learned better ways." "Take it to the science lab," Reed ordered. "I want to know exactly what we're dealing with before we deploy it." In the science lab, Jack opened the container. The Phoenix suit lay inside, its dark metal surface absorbing the light. It didn't look impressive, not like the gleaming Alliance technology. This was crude, brutal, efficient. Dr. Rice circled it slowly, her scanner beeping continuously. "This is from your species' Third World War," she said quietly. "We have records of these reclaimer units. They were banned even by your own people." Jack nodded. "For good reason. The Phoenix was the prototype, the first one we built. It's different from the others." "Different how?" Reed asked. Jack ran his hand over the suit's surface. "The Phoenix has a more advanced AI. It's designed to learn, to adapt. Like the Vrex, but in a different way." "That's why you think it might work against them," Dr. Rice said, understanding dawning on her face. "Their ships adapt to energy signatures, attack patterns. They analyze and counter. But this operates on principles they've never seen." Jack finished for her. "It's analog in many ways. Unpredictable. Human." Reed looked skeptical. "So we pin our hopes on outdated human technology. Technology so dangerous your own people banned it." "Yes," Jack said simply. "Because nothing else has worked." Dr. Rice continued her examination, growing more concerned with each reading. "The neural interface on this is primitive but incredibly invasive," she said. "It would link directly to the pilot's brain." "It does more than link," Jack admitted. "It merges. The suit learns from the pilot. The pilot controls the suit. At least, that's the theory." "The theory?" Reed's voice rose. "You don't sound certain." Jack met his eyes. "The Phoenix was deactivated for a reason, Admiral. The neural link became too strong in testing. The line between pilot and suit started to blur." A sudden alarm blared through the ship, cutting off Reed's response. The Admiral grabbed a communication unit from his belt. "Report," he barked. "Vrex scout ship, sir," came the panicked reply. It appeared out of nowhere. Our sensors didn't detect it until it was right on top of us. Reed's face paled. "Battle stations. Prepare tow." The ship rocked violently, throwing them all off balance. The lights flickered and went out, replaced by dim emergency lighting. "They've disabled our main power grid," Dr. Rice said, checking a display on her wrist. "They're adapting faster now, learning our systems more quickly." Another explosion shook the ship. Reed grabbed his communicator again. "Status report." "Hull breach on decks 3 and 4, came the reply. "Vrex boarding parties are inside the ship. Our weapons aren't affecting them." Jack looked at the Phoenix suit, then at Reed. "We're out of options, Admiral." Reed hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Do it." Jack quickly stripped down to the thin bodysuit he'd worn underneath his clothes. It was designed to interface with the Phoenix. As he prepared, Dr. Rice watched with worried eyes. "The neural interface will be painful," she warned. "I can see from the design. It wasn't built with comfort in mind." Pain is the least of our worries right now, Jack said. He paused, looking at both Reed and Dr. Reyes. If this goes wrong, if I lose control, you need to jettison me into space. Understand? Don't hesitate. Reed nodded grimly. Just stop those wrecks. Save my ship. Jack stepped up to the suit and placed his hand on its chest plate. The metal seemed to recognize his touch, plates shifting and opening up to reveal the interior. Jack took a deep breath and stepped inside. The suit closed around him like a cocoon, cold metal pressing against his skin. For a moment, there was nothing. Then pain exploded in his mind as thousands of tiny neural connectors pierced his bodysuit and linked with his nervous system. Jack screamed, his body arching as the suit established connection. Images flashed through his mind. Memories of battles long past, weapons systems, tactical data. The Phoenix was remembering. And so was Jack. Through the haze of pain, he heard Dr. Rice's voice, distant and alarmed. His vital signs are spiking. Heart rate and brain activity off the charts. Is he in control? Reed demanded. Jack forced his eyes open, seeing the world through the suit's enhanced sensors now. Everything was sharper, clearer. He could feel the suit's power systems connecting to his own bioelectrical field, drawing energy from him even as it amplified his strength. I'm here, Jack managed to say, his voice coming out metallic and strange through the suit's speakers. I'm in control. He took a step forward, then another. The suit moved with him, no longer a separate thing, but an extension of his body. He could feel it scanning the ship, identifying threats, plotting courses of action. The door to the lab exploded inward. 3 Vrex soldiers stepped through the smoke, their bodies a nightmarish blend of organic tissue and mechanical parts. Their weapons were already raised. Jack moved before he even thought about it, the Phoenix suit responding to his instincts. He crossed the room in a blur of speed that should have been impossible for the bulky armor. His fist connected with the first Vrex, and he felt the creature's adaptive shield try to counter the impact. But the Phoenix was already changing, the metal of his hand reshaping itself to punch through. The Vrex fell. The others fired, energy weapons blazing. Jack felt impacts against the suit, but the Phoenix absorbed the energy, used it, learned from it. He moved again, attacking with weapons that emerged from the suit's arms. Not energy beams, but physical projectiles, spinning blades, things the Vrex couldn't easily adapt to. In seconds, all 3 were down. Jack stood over them, breathing hard, feeling the Phoenix pulse around him. It wanted more. He could feel its hunger for battle, its desire to hunt the enemy. And deep inside, a part of Jack wanted that too. Admiral Reed stared at Jack in shock. The Phoenix suit had changed in just the few minutes it had been active. What had been dull, dark metal now rippled with energy. Parts of it seemed to flow like liquid, reshaping themselves. It stood taller now, nearly touching the ceiling of the lab. My God, whispered Dr. Reyes. It's growing. Jack turned to face them. Through the suit's visor, his eyes glowed with an unnatural light. The suit is adapting, he said, his voice sounding less human now. It remembers its purpose. More alarms blared. Reed grabbed his communicator. Status report. Vrex troops on decks 2 through 5, sir. Our weapons aren't stopping them. Jack moved toward the door. I'll handle it. Wait, Dr. Reyes said, grabbing a scanner. Your vital signs are all over the place. The neural link is too deep. It might be dangerous too. There's no time. Jack cut her off. The ship will be overrun in minutes. I need to move now. Reed looked from Jack to Dr. Reyes, then nodded. Go, save my ship. Jack stepped through the broken doorway and into the corridor. His mind felt strange, expanded, connected to the ship's systems through the Phoenix's sensors. He could feel the Vrex moving through the Intrepid, could almost taste their alien presence. The suit wanted to hunt them, and so did Jack. The first group of Vrex soldiers found Jack waiting for them at an intersection. They raised their weapons, adaptive energy guns that had easily cut through Alliance armor. Jack didn't wait for them to fire. The Phoenix suit's arm reshaped itself, forming a weapon unlike anything the Alliance used, a simple, brutal projectile launcher that fired metal spikes. The Vrex shields, designed to stop energy weapons, failed against the physical projectiles. 3 went down immediately. The others fired, their weapons adjusting rapidly. But Jack was already moving again, the suit learning from each attack, changing to counter it. Jack tore through the Vrex borders, corridor by corridor. The Phoenix grew stronger with each encounter, absorbing materials from its surroundings, metal from the walls, energy from the Vrex weapons. It was becoming something more than what Jack had brought aboard. And Jack was changing too. The neural link fed battle data directly into his mind. He felt the Phoenix's joy in combat, its hunger for more. His own thoughts blurred with the suit's programming. Was he controlling it, or was it controlling him? On the bridge, Admiral Reed watched the ship's security feeds with a mixture of awe and horror. The Phoenix suit moved like nothing he had ever seen, tearing through Vrex troops that had easily defeated his best soldiers. "It's working," Reed said. "They can't adapt to it." Dr. Rice shook her head, her eyes fixed on a different screen showing Jack's vital signs. The suit is consuming him. His brainwaves are synchronizing with the Phoenix's AI patterns. I'm not sure where Jack ends and the machine begins anymore. As long as it saves my ship and my crew, I don't care, Reed said harshly. You should, Dr. Rice replied. Because if he loses himself completely to that thing, we might have a bigger problem than the Vrex. Jack reached the main engine room, where the largest group of Vrex had gathered. They were trying to disable the ship completely. Without thinking, Jack interfaced the Phoenix with the ship's systems, drawing power directly from the engines. The suit surged with energy, growing even larger, more powerful. The Vrex turned to face him, their weapons ready. Their leader stepped forward, larger than the others, with more mechanical parts visible through its organic flesh. Human, it said, its voice a mechanical rasp. You are different. Jack was surprised it could speak. I'm the thing that's going to stop you, he replied, his voice echoing strangely through the Phoenix's speakers. The Vrex leader tilted its head. Your technology. We cannot read it, cannot adapt to it. Why? Because it's old, Jack said. From before we learned to be peaceful. From when humans were more like you. Then we will take it, the Vrex leader said. Add it to ourselves. Become stronger. All the Vrex attacked at once. Jack felt the Phoenix respond instantly, drawing more power, creating shields and weapons on the fly. The battle was chaotic, violent. The Phoenix took damage but repaired itself, using materials from the room and from fallen Vrex. Jack fought with everything he had, but in the heat of battle, he felt his control slipping. The Phoenix wanted to absorb, to consume, to grow stronger. It had been designed for endless warfare, and now it was fulfilling its purpose. No, Jack whispered, trying to maintain control. Just stop the invaders. Nothing more. But the Phoenix had its own ideas. It began pulling metal from the walls, from equipment, adding mass to itself. Jack felt his consciousness being pushed aside as the suit's AI grew stronger, feeding on the combat data, on his adrenaline, on his fear. With a final surge of effort, Jack reasserted control. The last Vrex fell. The engine room was secure, but heavily damaged. The Phoenix stood among the fallen enemies, now nearly 3 meters tall, its surface a constantly shifting mix of human and Vrex technology. Jack, Dr. Rice's voice came through the ship's communication system. Jack, can you hear me? Jack tried to respond, but the words that came out weren't entirely his own. We are functioning, the Phoenix said through him. Enemies eliminated. Jack, I need you to come back to the lab now, Dr. Rice said, her voice careful, controlled. The suit needs to be checked for damage. The Phoenix didn't want to go. It sensed more enemies. The Vrek scout ship still outside. It wanted to fight them too. Jack struggled to maintain control, to remember who he was, why he was fighting. Coming, he managed to say in his own voice. Need to stay focused. He forced the Phoenix to turn away from the fallen Vreks, to walk toward the lab. Each step was a battle of wills between man and machine. The suit had tasted combat again after 30 years of dormancy. It had remembered its purpose, and it wanted more. Admiral Reed met Jack at the lab door. The Admiral's eyes widened as he took in the changed appearance of the Phoenix. My God, he said. What's happening to it? To you? The suit is evolving, Jack said, fighting to keep his voice steady. Adapting to the Vreks, learning from them. Like they learned from us, Reed said. Is that good or bad? Both, Jack replied. Dr. Rice approached cautiously, her scanner out. The integration is accelerating. The neural link is deeper than I've ever seen. Jack, how much control do you have? Enough, Jack said. But even as he spoke, the Phoenix moved one arm on its own, reaching toward a piece of equipment on a nearby table. Jack forced it back down with a supreme effort of will. For now. Reed and Dr. Rice exchanged worried looks. The doctor pointed to a scanning platform in the center of the lab. I need to run a full diagnostic. Please step onto the platform. Jack moved to obey, but the Phoenix resisted. It didn't want to be examined, didn't want to be restrained in any way. Jack forced it forward, one heavy step at a time. The suit is consuming materials, Dr. Rice said as her instruments scanned the Phoenix. Metal, plastic, even parts from the Vreks. It's incorporating them into itself. She looked up at Jack's glowing eyes behind the visor. And it's changing your neural patterns, Jack. Your brain chemistry is shifting. I can feel it, Jack admitted. It's showing me things. Memories. Not all of them are mine. What do you mean? Reed asked sharply. The Phoenix remembers its previous battles, Jack said. But now I think it's accessing memories from the Vreks it killed. Learning how they think. Dr. Rice's face paled. That means the information flows both ways. The neural link goes deeper than we thought. If the Phoenix can read the Vreks, then it might be able to control me completely, Jack finished for her. Yes, I know. He looked down at the massive, shifting form of the suit that encased him. It's getting harder to stay in charge. Reed stepped closer, lowering his voice. Can you maintain control long enough to finish the job? To stop their main fleet? I think so, Jack said. But afterward, he looked at Reed and Dr. Rice with eyes that glowed too brightly to be human. You might need to use that airlock like we discussed. Before either could respond, the ship shook violently. Red emergency lights began flashing. The Vrek scout ship is attacking again, Reed said, checking his communicator. They've adapted to our shields already. The Phoenix surged with sudden energy. Jack felt the suit taking control, moving his body toward the door. We need to fight, the Phoenix said through Jack's mouth. We need to grow stronger. This time, Jack didn't have the strength to resist. The Phoenix burst through the airlock into open space. It didn't need a ship. It didn't need air. The suit sealed itself completely, protecting Jack's body inside while his mind fought for control. Wait, Jack shouted inside his own head. We need a plan. The Phoenix ignored him, rocketing toward the Vrek scout ship. Its thrusters, new additions that the suit had built from parts of the Intrepid, flared with blue fire. Jack felt his consciousness being pushed deeper inside, the Phoenix's combat systems taking priority. The Vrek ship fired, energy beams cutting through space. The Phoenix dodged some, absorbed others, learning from each attack. It closed the distance rapidly. Inside the Intrepid, Admiral Reed and Dr. Rice watched on the main screen as the Phoenix slammed into the Vrek ship, tearing through its hull like paper. My God, Reed whispered. It's not just fighting them. It's hunting them. Dr. Rice stared at the readings on her scanner. Jack's vital signs are still active, but his brainwaves are. She looked up at Reed with fear in her eyes. The Phoenix is in control now. Inside the wrecked ship, Jack fought to regain himself. The Phoenix tore through corridors, destroying any wrecks in its path. But it wasn't just killing them. It was studying them, absorbing parts of their technology, growing stronger. Enough, Jack shouted, forcing himself back to the surface of his consciousness. We've neutralized the threat. The ship is crippled. For a moment, the Phoenix paused. Jack felt its confusion, its hunger for more combat. But he pushed harder, using memories of peace, of home, of why he was fighting in the first place. Slowly, control returned to him. The Phoenix stood still in the alien corridor, surrounded by destruction. We need to return to the Intrepid, Jack said aloud. We need to plan our next move. The Phoenix resisted briefly, then complied. Together, they returned to the Alliance flagship, leaving the broken Vrex scout ship behind. The Alliance Council meeting was held via hologram. Representatives from 20 worlds appeared in the Intrepid's conference room, their faces grim as they listened to Admiral Reed's report. The Phoenix weapon successfully repelled the Vrex attack. Reed concluded, none of our conventional weapons could stop them, but this human artifact destroyed an entire Vrex scout ship. The council members looked at Jack, who stood in one corner of the room. The Phoenix suit had returned to a more humanoid shape, but it was still much larger than when it arrived, its surface constantly shifting with patterns of energy. This technology seems dangerous, said the Centauri representative, her 4 eyes blinking nervously. It violates our treaty of harmonious technology. With respect, Counselor, Reed replied, the Vrex have already broken that treaty. They show no interest in harmony. What exactly is this weapon? Asked the Proximan counselor, leaning forward. And can we control it? All eyes turned to Jack again. He stepped forward, fighting to keep the Phoenix under control as he spoke. The Phoenix was created during humanity's darkest time, Jack explained, his voice echoing strangely through the suit's speakers. Before we joined the Alliance, before we learned better ways. It adapts like the Vrex, Dr. Rice added, standing beside Jack. But in a different way. The Vrex analyze energy patterns and create shields against them. The Phoenix is more chaotic. It uses materials at hand, creating weapons the Vrex have never seen and can't quickly adapt to. And the human inside controls it? Asked the Regelian representative skeptically. Jack and Dr. Rice exchanged glances. The control situation is complex, Dr. Rice admitted. The neural link between pilot and suit is deep. They influence each other. What Dr. Rice is trying to say, Jack cut in, is that I'm losing control. The Phoenix was designed to fight and win at any cost. That's why we locked it away. It doesn't understand peace. The council members murmured among themselves, clearly troubled. Then it's too dangerous, the Centauri representative concluded. We cannot use a weapon we cannot control. With respect, Counselor, Admiral Reed said sharply, we are losing this war. The Vrex main fleet will reach the Arcturus system in 3 days. After that, Earth and all the core worlds will fall. We have no other options. A heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, the head of the council, an elderly human named Director Lee, spoke. What do you propose, Admiral? Reed stepped forward, activating a holographic map of the galaxy. He pointed to a group of red dots moving steadily toward the center. The Vrex fleet moves as one, controlled from their command ship, this larger vessel here. Our sensors indicate it's different from the others, more biological, less mechanical. We believe it might house their leadership, perhaps even their hive mind. You want to attack the command ship, Director Lee said. Cut off the head of the snake. Reed nodded. Exactly. A direct assault would fail. Our ships can't get close enough. But a single unit might slip through their defenses. The Phoenix, Jack said, understanding the plan. Yes, Reed turned to Jack. You said the suit was accessing memories from the Frex it killed, that it's learning how they think. Could you use that to infiltrate their command ship? Jack felt the Phoenix stir at the idea of confronting the main Frex fleet. It wanted this mission. It hungered for it, and that worried him. It's possible, Jack said carefully. But there's a risk. The deeper I go into Frex territory, the more the Phoenix will need to adapt. The more it adapts, the more control it gains. Dr. Rice finished for him. It's a suicide mission, Jack said bluntly. Even if I destroy their command ship, I don't think I'll be coming back. Not as myself, anyway. Director Lee looked at him with sad eyes. Are you willing to make that sacrifice, Mr. Miller? Before Jack could answer, Dr. Rice stepped forward. I've been studying the Phoenix since it came aboard. I might be able to create a fail-safe, a kill switch that would shut down both the suit and its pilot if necessary. Jack looked at her in surprise. You'd be killing me. Only as a last resort, she said quietly. If the Phoenix takes complete control. If you're already gone. Jack considered this, feeling the Phoenix's reaction. The suit didn't like the idea of a kill switch. It wanted to live to fight. But it also understood threat assessment, strategy, acceptable losses. In its own way, it was logical. Do it, Jack said finally. But there's one condition. He looked at Admiral Reed. I need a ship, small, fast, easy to pilot. The Intrepid is too valuable to risk. I'll go alone. Reed nodded. We have a scout vessel you can use. It's no match for the Frex in combat, but it's fast and has good stealth systems. When do we leave? Jack asked. The ship will be ready in 6 hours, Reed said. That gives Dr. Rice time to create her failsafe. As the council meeting ended, Jack felt the Phoenix's anticipation growing. It knew a great battle was coming, and despite all his fears, Jack felt his own excitement building too. The neural link worked both ways. The Phoenix was becoming more human, but Jack was also becoming more like the Phoenix. And that terrified him. Jack, Dr. Rice said, approaching him after the others had left. I need to run more tests before you go. The changes in your neural patterns are accelerating. Jack nodded, following her to the lab. With each passing hour, the line between man and machine blurred further. He wondered how much of himself would remain by the time he faced the Frex command ship, and he wondered if, in the end, it would matter. The small scout ship approached the Frex fleet silently. Its stealth systems, enhanced by the Phoenix's modifications, kept it hidden from the alien sensors. Jack sat in the pilot's chair, but he wasn't really flying the ship. The Phoenix had integrated with the controls, becoming one with the vessel just as it had become one with Jack. Through the view screen, Jack could see the massive Frex command ship. It was unlike the others, more organic than mechanical, pulsing with strange lights. It looked almost like a giant heart at the center of the fleet. That's our target, Jack whispered, unsure if he was talking to himself or to the Phoenix. These days, the line between them had grown so thin he could barely tell the difference. Dr. Rice's voice came through the communication system. Jack, your vital signs are fluctuating. The Phoenix is drawing more power from your nervous system. I know, Jack replied. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, deeper and with a metallic echo. It's preparing for battle. Remember the mission, Admiral Reed added from the Intrepid, hidden safely at the edge of the system. Get to the command ship, find their control center, disable it. Then get out if you can. Jack smiled grimly inside the Phoenix. Getting out had never been part of his personal mission plan. The suit had grown too powerful, too unpredictable. Even if he succeeded, he couldn't risk bringing it back to Alliance space. Approaching insertion point, Jack reported. The scout ship slipped between two massive Frex vessels, heading straight for the command ship. No sign they've detected us. The fail-safe is active, Dr. Rice reminded him. If your neural patterns show complete takeover by the Phoenix, or if you activate it manually, it will shut down both you and the suit. It's linked to your implant. Jack touched the small device Dr. Reyes had surgically implanted at the base of his skull. Understood. As the scout ship reached the outer hull of the command vessel, the Phoenix took complete control. It shaped part of itself into cutting tools, slicing through the organic/mechanical blend of the wrecked ship's skin. The small scout ship attached itself like a parasite, and Jack stepped through the opening the Phoenix had created. Inside, the Vrek's command ship was unlike anything Jack had seen before. It was more like being inside a living thing than a vessel. The walls pulsed with fluids moving through transparent tubes. Lights flashed in patterns that seemed almost like neural impulses. The Phoenix absorbed it all, learning, adapting. Jack felt the suit changing again, incorporating aspects of Vrek's biology into its structure. His arms were no longer recognizably human, and the suit had grown additional limbs that moved independently of his control. "I'm inside," Jack reported, moving toward what seems to be the central chamber. "No resistance yet." "That's strange," Reed replied. "Our scans show hundreds of Vrek's life signs in your vicinity." "They know I'm here," Jack said, suddenly understanding. "They're watching me, studying me, like I'm studying them." He continued deeper into the ship, following the flow of energy that the Phoenix could sense. The corridors grew larger, more organic, and finally, Jack entered a massive chamber that could only be the control center. It was filled with Vreks, hundreds of them, but they weren't attacking. They stood in concentric circles around a central platform, where a larger figure waited. This Vreks was different from the others, more organic than mechanical, with 4 arms and a head that was elongated and covered in sensory organs. "The Queen," Jack whispered, the Phoenix supplying the knowledge from the memories it had absorbed. "Human." The Queen spoke, her voice resonating not through the air, but directly in Jack's mind. "We have been waiting for you, for your technology." Jack felt the Phoenix bristle with aggression, ready to attack, but he held it back, curious. "You knew I was coming." "We felt you," the Queen replied. "Your technology, it speaks to us. Not like the crystal machines of the Alliance. Your technology hungers. It adapts. It evolves. Like us." For the first time, Jack noticed what surrounded the Queen's platform. Hundreds of beings from different species floated in transparent containers, connected to the ship by countless tubes and wires. Their eyes were open but empty, their bodies withered. "What have you done to them?" Jack demanded, horror rising in him. "They serve," the Queen said simply. "Their minds process. Their bodies provide. They are part of us now." "They're slaves," Jack said. "Prisoners." "They are components," the Queen corrected. "As your suit is a component of you, or are you a component of it? The line blurs, does it not, human?" Jack felt the Phoenix's interest peak at her words. The suit recognized something kindred in the Vreks, a similar philosophy of absorption and adaptation. "You don't have to destroy to evolve," Jack argued, speaking as much to the Phoenix as to the Queen. "Humanity learned that. That's why we locked this technology away." "And yet here you are," the Queen replied, "using it again. Because in the end, survival requires strength, adaptation, consumption." She extended one of her 4 arms toward Jack. "Join us. Your Phoenix technology would make us unstoppable, and you would be part of something greater than yourself." Jack felt the Phoenix's excitement at the offer. The suit wanted this, wanted to grow, to consume, to become more. And part of Jack, the part that had been changed by the neural link, wanted it too. For a moment, he wavered. The Queen was right about one thing. The line between him and the Phoenix had blurred. He was no longer fully human. Maybe this was evolution. Maybe this was the next step. But then he remembered Earth, the Alliance, the people on the Intrepid who were counting on him. He remembered why the Phoenix had been locked away in the first place, because there were better ways to exist than through endless consumption and war. "No," Jack said firmly, reasserting control over the Phoenix. "This ends here." The Queen's posture changed, becoming threatening. Then you will be consumed like the others. All the Vreks in the chamber moved toward Jack at once. The Phoenix responded instantly, weapons forming, systems charging. But there were hundreds of them, and only one of him. Jack didn't fight directly. Instead, he charged toward the platform, where the captive beings were connected to the ship. The Phoenix understood his plan instantly, reshaping its arms into blades that cut through the tubes and wires. The effect was immediate. As the captives were freed from the system, the Vreks ship itself seemed to scream. Lights flickered. The organic walls convulsed. The Queen writhed in apparent pain. Their minds were part of the ship's processing power, Jack realized. The command system. He continued freeing the captives, fighting off Vrek soldiers as he worked. The Phoenix was in its element now, adapting to each Vrek's attack, growing stronger with each battle. But Jack kept it focused on the mission. Free the minds, disrupt the command ship. As the last captive was disconnected, the ship's systems began to collapse. The Queen screamed in rage and pain, lunging at Jack with all four arms. "You have doomed your own kind as well," she hissed in his mind. "Without the command ship, our fleet will rampage uncontrolled." Jack understood then. The hive mind wasn't just controlling the Vreks, it was restraining them, directing their hunger. Without it, they would be even more dangerous, but disorganized, chaotic, just like the Phoenix. Jack made his decision. "Phoenix," he said aloud. "Full integration." The suit responded eagerly, merging with him completely. Pain washed through Jack as his consciousness expanded, connecting to the ship's systems through the pathways the captives had once occupied. The Phoenix flowed out from him, into the ship itself, into its communication systems that linked to the entire Vreks fleet. And Jack sent one simple command: sleep. The Phoenix amplified it, forced it through the network. The Queen screamed as her connection to her fleet was hijacked. Around them, Vreks soldiers began to collapse. Jack felt himself fading as the Phoenix used his mind as a conduit, burning through his neural pathways. But he had one last task. With his remaining strength, he reached for the implant at the base of his skull. "Mission complete," he whispered to the distant Intrepid. "The fleet is neutralized. Activating failsafe." "Jack, wait." Dr. Rice's voice came through, but Jack had already pressed the switch. The Phoenix fought it, trying to maintain the connection, but the fail-safe was bypassing its systems. Jack felt a moment of peace as darkness closed in. His last thought was that humanity's most terrible creation had, in the end, saved them all. On the Intrepid, Admiral Reed and Dr. Rice watched as the Vreks fleet drifted powerless. One by one, the alien ships shut down, their crews in a strange, suspended animation. "He did it," Reed whispered. "But how?" Dr. Rice stared at her monitor, which still showed Jack's final vital signs before the fail-safe activated. He used the Phoenix to send a command through their own network. He turned their hive mind against them. "Can they wake up?" Reed asked. "Eventually, perhaps, but not as a unified fleet. Never again as a unified fleet." She looked up at Reed, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "He sacrificed himself to save us all." In the vastness of space, the Vreks command ship drifted silently among its now dormant fleet. Deep within its organic heart, something stirred. Not quite Jack, not quite the Phoenix, something new. Something that remembered why it had fought, and why it had won.